It is episode 61 of the Talking Landscape Photography Show. We've gone from 6 to the 60s in a year and a half, and we're still going strong, which is great to see. We have a wonderful guest on tonight. We're going to get on in about 15 minutes, Mr. Tony Hewitt. But we're going to just do our usual what's going on in the industry and how things are going on this week. I had a very wonderful delivery in the mail today of this book here. And I actually just had Ricardo on the phone just to tell him just how freaking incredible and amazing this body of work is. It has an incredible introduction by David Duchemin, and the design from Dow Dijkstra. Dex, as he's commonly known, is exceptional. The caliber and the depth and the simplicity and elegance of the work it's one of the best books I've actually ever seen. In fact, I was actually surprised how good it was. Like, I knew it'd be good, but it's exceeded my expectations. And if you hadn't and weren't familiar with Ricardo's work, we've had him on the show before. The title of the book is Space for the Soul to Breathe. And essentially his work is very much about space, emotional space, thoughtful space, and physical space. And he uses his photography in his life to give himself breathing room, to allow things to settle, to give opportunity to reflect on the deeper things of life. And that's very much comes through in this body of work. And you can't help but feel calmed and grounded and centered somehow by spending time with the work. So I don't think he makes anything out of this book. He went to the nth degree to run it through Memento Pro locally in Sydney. So, because he loves the company, and Jeff and Libby, who run it, two of the most incredible people in the industry for supporting photography and books and exhibitions in particular. And I've known them for a decade too, and they're incredible people. So it's definitely a labor of love, and it's literally years in the making. It's a collection of a decade's worth of work. And I just wanted to
he went over that a little bit too, didn't he, Paul, when he came on his show a while back?
Yeah, we touched on it. His original one was the A3, all the bells and whistles, beautiful textured paper, comes with a print. But he realized that some people might not be able to afford that. So he then invested in 300 copies of the non-limited edition, or the open edition book, which makes it affordable for punters like me. So, it just really touched me seeing it in person and having a chat to Ricardo about what it's meant for him to create it. He's a good friend of mine from a Light Collective. That was really special.
What do you think of the new R3?
Yeah, so about 10 or 15 years ago, I used a camera called the EOS 5 or the EOS 3, I think it was, film camera. And it was the first one in the world to bring in eye-controlled autofocus. And it actually tracks your eye, and it has a capacity to both focus and expose on exactly what you're looking at the second you push your shutter. So for sports and really fast-moving portrait stuff in groups, it's actually quite amazing. And I don't know why, but they stopped using it, and they didn't put in any more of their cameras. And all of a sudden, as of today, they've actually announced it in their flagship R3 camera. And if you knew the Canon lineup, they've been quite traditional about it. The top of their range camera, usually a 1 series camera, being the larger body, the fastest autofocus, the fastest frame rate, and very much aimed at documentary, sports, and even wildlife photographers. And it looks like they've done a similar thing with the R3. So if you want something really robust and you really want the 30 frames a second, it actually has 8 stops of image stabilization, which is, I'm finding with the R5, actually incredible, a bit of a game changer. I've always wanted to use that word. I always think as soon as I hear that word, I start breaking out in a rash. But from going from no image stabilization, apart from a little bit of lens, to 8 full stops has really made a huge difference. I'm not quite in the Will Patino anti-tripod camp, but I'm heading in that direction. It's only 24 megapixels, only being, if for most intents and purposes, there's very few photographers in the world that need more than that, really. But I do, like our guest tonight, Tony, really like seeing my work large. And I do have clients at exhibitions where I want to produce really large prints. And in that case, it can make a bit of a difference. And with the aerial work that I love to do as well. Having the extra pixel count is really useful, so you can crop in later, because you don't always get over the top of what you want. But yeah, and Lukey, you've just invested in the latest Samsung I'm finding it does 100 megapixels, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, just the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra. Mainly upgraded that for the better camera. And yeah, the resolution's pretty amazing on it. But it is, at the end of the day, just a phone. So, but it's very good to have a good option, mainly to do your socials and all that kind of thing. Yeah, I guess it's the best camera is the one you have with you, and I can't have my Sony with me all the time, so yeah, it is definitely very handy for that. The resolution capabilities and what cameras can do in phones these days is just getting more and more hard to ignore, I suppose. And with the cinematic mode that the new iPhone has and all that sort of thing, it's getting better and better in terms of being an actual dedicated device for creation of content. I don't think you're ever going to beat the real McCoy, but it's certainly it's good to see. Have you been out on any shoots lately, Paul?
Well, I was on a beautiful island with you last week from memory, that I'm still living off the memories of. I think we said we weren't going to say what island it was, but
no, we won't. We'll just say it's at, on Freycinet National Park. But yeah, it was definitely a really great time away, and I guess hopefully we can show some shots of that down the track too, Paul.
Yeah, we got really lucky. We had a couple of absolutely epic sunsets, like ridiculous. So some of the best I've had in years, actually, and we were literally just pretty much had the island to ourselves, really. I think there's one boat in the harbour, and I don't think they're even on land. So literally a lot of the time we can't have the island to ourselves. And it's not a small island. It's pretty rugged, pretty wild. And we went on some beautiful walks and waterfall trips. Luke and I sort of split ways one night, and he went up high, probably about a 6K walk to a beautiful kind of waterfall alcove sort of thing with a lot of height. And I was sort of down low along the coastline, and we sort of ummed and ahed about which way to go, and we both joined to different things. And that's part of the beauty of being in the same place, is even is letting ourselves go as we can.
Yeah, and I was actually, part of the shoot I did was actually with the new Laowa 9mm lens, which was quite an interesting lens to use, and I've been using that more and more. I didn't think 9mm was a focal length that I'd actually find that useful, but 9mm on a full frame is very, very wide. You've got to be very careful not to get your feet in the shot, but it does really allow for some very, very unique imagery to be captured. So that's definitely...
Yeah, I actually remember Luke coming back that night saying that it wasn't possible to get the photographs that he wanted to get without it, actually, because it's a very small, compact sort of lens, and he literally needed to lean to get really, really close to a rock structure and routed behind something that was almost impossible even to use a tripod with.
Because it's got close focusing, it's really good too. So it's definitely one to look out for. I think it's only on mirrorless cameras at the moment, but I guess we're not here for chit chat. We're here because we have an absolutely fantastic guest with us tonight. And Paul, did you want to do a bit of an intro to Tony Hewitt?
Yeah, Tony Hewitt. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tony. I believe maybe triple grandmaster now. I know he recently, with the WPPI and certainly with Australia, and I was trying to work out, actually I tried to look it up actually for New Zealand as well, but he's one of the most decorated photographers in this part of the world, and he's a bit of an icon in the industry for Australia. And since I've been involved with the RPP, Tony's been the lead man in terms of presenting and sort of showing the way in terms of what a well-rounded, extremely capable person can do in the industry. And what's always struck me about Tony is even though in the modern understanding and people that have just come up to his work in recent times, which I've personally been very inspired by, particularly with the aerial abstract kind of realm, is Tony has a huge career that goes back through all sorts of different genres. So he has an incredibly well-rounded view of what the industry is and how it's been and where it's progressing. And he always seems to find himself on the front edge of most things happening in the industry, which I really appreciate. And I also really admire the amount of commitment that he's given to the industry in terms of his personal time as a mentor, as a coach, as an advocate for the award system and the RPP. He's also an incredible speaker, presenter, coach, mentor, writer, author. He's been involved in many books. And when's the film coming out of Tony's life? So Yeah, I
Thank you,
think
Paul.
if I'm really honest, there's not too many people that I sort of put up there a bit, but that I aspire to be like. But Tony's one of them, because I aspire to be really well-rounded and capable in a lot of different ways. And there's a risk of being a jack of all trades, a master of none. But I aspire to be a master of all to some extent. And I've watched someone like Tony do that literally. So I know it's possible. So it's always been really inspiring for me, Tony. Thanks for taking the time. He's a busy man, and he's probably getting paid truckloads of money to offer his incredible IP content. And he's managed to we managed to bungalow him on our little show here. So very grateful, Tony. We're going to be a sort of a bit of a flowing, interactive night tonight, and you might be surprised at the different genres we're going to cover tonight in terms of development of personal style. And if you didn't know Tony, he's an incredibly thoughtful person, and he works in a very conceptual, idealistic capacity as much as he does in technical. So, and personal style is very much about that. And I think we might all be quite surprised with how we reflect on how much we are almost more aware, consciously or otherwise, than we thought we were of what our style is, and certainly more conscious about what we want it to be and how to steer it moving forward after tonight. So thank you, Tony.
Wow, how am I going to live up to that?
Just relax.
That's a hell of an intro, Paul. Thank you. But thank you for having me. And appreciate that. I don't know about the master of none, and I must admit I feel a little bit sheepish with the the sort of description of being a master of technology and all of that, when I've had a few issues with technology today, as I mentioned to the boys. So I apologise for my tardiness. I'm normally ready to roll. So the thing I looked forward to today is that the way this program runs is it's quite relaxed and very discussion based, rather than me sitting here and running through a presentation or a seminar. So if there are any questions as we roll along, please feel free to either, however it gets done, let us know, and I'm happy to go down those roads.
Definitely raise them. Yeah,
you guys want to go, but. In terms of personal style, and Paul alluded to a few things there. One of the things I've discovered after 30 years in the industry is that most of us go looking for a style, or we want to develop a style, or we're hoping to find a style. And I feel a little bit like I've ended up back where I started, which is very synonymous with a quote that I use when we talk about the Girt By Sea Project. T.S. Eliot, I shall set out on my exploring, and when I return to the place I started after all that exploring, discover that I'll get back to where I started and discover the place for the first time. I find myself now realising that I never had to find a style, that I never had to go looking for a style. I just had to get out the way and let the style show itself, because it was always there. I think we can look back over everything we've done in our life as children and other areas, whether you used to draw pictures, whatever you did, you'll probably find that the foundations of the structural elements of your style have always been there, because ultimately your style is you. It's how you move through the world. It's how you interact with the world around you. It's how you express yourself. I find that style, while we might be looking at photographic style, style is also, it's the style you're using in photography will have some similarities with the way you speak to people, the way you, the movies you like, the type of adverts you respond to, the type of cars you choose, the way you design your house. It's all part of who we are. And I find people often talk about it as if it's something, this magical thing that you've got to go out on a journey to find, or, it's this holy grail that, I wonder if I'll ever find. I'm looking for my style. Well, stop looking, because you've already got it. Perhaps it's allowing it to be seen by others is the question, or that's the challenge. I just said to the guys, I'd go through a couple of pictures, maybe some that people have seen in the past, maybe not. I was going to share my screen, and we'll hopefully.
Tony, just before we do, we've sort of jumped into almost like an assumption of the significance of personal style, but why is it important? Why are people so drawn to realizing what there is and developing one in the first place? What's the significance of it, do you think?
I think ultimately, when whatever we do, but you're talking photography, We want ownership of it. We want ownership of something. We want to feel like that if we're putting it out there, it's a representation not of just what we saw, but of who we are. Because ultimately, photography is a communication. It's us saying something about something. It's not just something. And in order to do that, we want it to be our voice. We want to have some recognisable signature in amongst it to feel like we have some ownership over it. And I don't mean, I'm the only one who took a picture of this and somebody else did it. I don't mean that. I mean, here's my voice. And I think all human beings want to be heard. We all want to be significant. We want to have some level of significance. And I don't mean everyone wants to be on stage and rock stars and things like that, but we all look for some level of significance, and significance can translate quite easily into purpose. Why are we doing things? Why do we get up early in the morning at 4 a.m. when it's minus 10 degrees and traipse up some mountain with a tripod and 28 kilos of camera gear and take a picture, and then come back and sit up to 3 in the morning trying to make it look good? Why do we do that? Because I think ultimately we'd like to have a say. And style is a way of knowing that when that voice gets heard, people kind of recognise it as partly you or your voice. That's for me. And it's not about ego. You might start off feeling a bit like ego, but it's about recognition of, each and every one of us has a unique way of seeing the world, and it's recognition of that uniqueness.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it, Tony. It's very simple but quite profound when you explain it that way. Self-expression, and I guess in a way it's a little bit, maybe people, especially down the track, it's a little bit of legacy. It's a little bit of leaving some of them in the world through their imagery, not just images. But it's also,
it's about being real. Like if you go out and shoot pictures, if I look at someone like Salgado, and I go out and get a black and white camera and I go to the places he does and I shoot the workers and I get the feelings he had and all of that, but it's not what I want to do, or it's not what I do. I do it because someone else said it's really good. Then it doesn't feel like it's my voice. It's just me replicating. If I see something and I think in my heart I'd like to shoot it in colour, but someone's voice in my head keeps telling me our colours, no, hey, you've got to shoot this in black and white, and I follow their wishes or their whims, then I'm trying to speak my truth, but through somebody else. And ultimately, my truth can only be my truth if it comes from my own voice. So I feel like what we're ultimately trying to do is we're trying to share something that is not visible through a visible medium. We're trying to share what it feels like to me to be here, or if this is what it feels like for me to see this, even in the portrait world, like I'm photographing somebody and they've come to me, not another photographer. I would like them to come to me because of the way I see people and way and how I bring out certain things in people. So they're looking for my style, and it's something that people can recognise. So to me, it's about significance and purpose, and it's about having a reason to do something. So I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but I suppose that's the ones that drive through me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it actually took, other people to reflect back to me that they saw a style before I sort of recognized that I had one in a way. And it was, I really appreciate over the years how you've alluded to the invisible becoming visible a lot, and the way you approach your thought process around work, and the qualities and characteristics you can bring into an image. And it really struck me because I was trying to figure it out. Sometimes people ask you to, offer a description of your work, or you've got to do a magazine article or something and talk about yourself. And it's not that easy, but it's quite a powerful exercise to do, to actually sit and reflect. And I think it boils back down to purpose. And I think you just really clarified that for me, to send Tony, like, what's the intention? Why are you doing this? Why are you going out of bed? What are you trying to express? And I think as we'll reflect on through Tony's images and our own journey, you might be surprised of just how much of you is already coming through.
Yeah, I think you find, as I said, if you focus, it's like one of those optical illusions where you'll sort of look for something, but if you look at it, you can't see it. You've got to look away from it and see it.
Yeah.
And style, if you're out there and you're focused on looking for style, you probably won't notice it. It's when you get on with doing what's instinctively what you want that you will find it. That's where you'll find style. So it's like looking at the shadows on the wall and trying to make sense of them, and not realizing that if you really want to see what's going on, you've got to turn around and look at what's creating the shadow in the first place. And that's style. But the world sees our shadows. They see the marks that we leave on the world. And if you want to understand style, it's about, to give you an example, Peter Adams, who I hope you guys, even though it's not a landscape book, can push out there, that Peter Adams, one of Australia's iconic portrait photographers, has released a book which is called Who Shot That? And he's done it over 30 or 40 years of his career. And he's got some of the most famous photographers in the world, from Salgado to Leibovitz to Elliot Erwitt and landscape portrait, the whole lot, And I was blown away a few years ago. I'm very privileged when he asked to interview me and to be part of that book. It was one of the highlights of my career, to be honest. And it's not something that people even know about. And to be honest, the book's come out. Not everybody he shot is in the book. I don't know if I'm in the book, and I may not even be in the book. But the fact that I was asked, and he took a photo of me, and I'm standing in a frame. It's a big window frame was built for a new bar up in the Blue Mountains. And he stood me in this framework. It was just a cross, and the frame was probably 3 meters by 3 meters. So it was very big. And they were laid on the floor of this new warehouse where they were building that sort of wine bar. He stood it up against the wall with permission, and I stood inside the frame. And he said, "This is you. This is who you are." And I said, "Yeah, it is actually." And I can go back and realise that in school I was very strong at mathematics and I was very strong at physics. I was a sort of a 96% in my leaving year for physics and something similar for my maths. So that's where my strengths seemed to lie. And with my upbringing, my father was very, very strong in physics. He was an engineer type. So that's what was important. But I was pulled towards the art side of things. Music was very strong for me, drawing, poetry, and ultimately photography. However, the strength and the skill sets that I had around mathematics and calculus, geometry, symmetry, all come through in all my work. And that's what Peter identified. So he did this portrait of me. And, and even when he did it, he did a photograph of me, but he was acknowledging my style. He was making sure and that's a great portrait artist, that the environment, that the way the portrait's presented is showing the person and who they are and the energy around them and the way they do things. And he was portraying some clues to my style, a square format portrait, not traditional, in a frame within a frame, perfectly balanced, not necessarily traditional, but he was respecting and acknowledging my attraction and my romantic seduction to that get seduced by symmetry. That's kind of what it comes down to. So I look back over work. I look back over whether it's portrait or weddings and things I've done over the years, and even though it's only in the last probably 3 or 4 years, I've truly started to understand more clearly what my style is or what I'm about, what my voice is, and having confidence in owning it. And it is about owning it, because it'll show up at times when you stop getting in your own way and stop worrying about what everybody else thinks. Your style will show up, and you'll go, wow, this is me doing my best work. And then somebody might not like it, and you suddenly go, oh, okay. If you're into the awards game, you put in the awards and it doesn't do so well, oh shit, okay, I won't do that anymore. But maybe that was the real you, and it just needs more airtime or airplay before it gets picked up by all the radio stations. Maybe only one DJ is going to play that shot, So nowadays, one of the greatest satisfactions I have is, while I haven't sort of so much within Australian, and in the awards process, and we can talk about that later, but awards are for different reasons at different parts of your career. So I haven't entered Australian awards for a few years, not just because of COVID, but even before that, because I was chairing the awards. But one of my greatest satisfaction is the awards I have entered, whether it's overseas, like the overseas in England or say the US. All the images that I'm entering in the last 5, 6, 7 years are all out of exhibitions. They're all work that I've done that I wanted to do. So in the early days, you might shoot for the client at a wedding or a portrait, and then you go looking for award shots, and you may take some of those shots and do more to them to suit the awards process or to capture the attention of a judge. Or you may go out and shoot specifically for the awards. A lot of portrait photographers will go to shoot specifically for the awards. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'm not in any way. I did that for a long time. And it's not that I don't think I could do it now. It's just that I kind of wanted a different satisfaction if I did do that. And so now I choose from what I'm doing. Now, the last couple of years, the work that's gone into any competition around the world has come out of, sometimes some years I only produce 25, 30 shots for a collection. I shoot thousands and thousands, and they sit in back catalogues, and I have a lot of my clients that I customize their order. Like they'll say, have you got this? And I'll put together a little presentation, and I sort of do a bespoke thing, which is a conscious decision from a business point of view, where I don't put, here's 1,000 more images this month to go up on my website. Here are some more from the Northwest, work your way through, buy one. I want to be more exclusive. I want people to feel like if they come to me, I'm working in a different space to those that might be creating more of a library. And that's an equally valid model. But the satisfaction in the recent awards over the last few years that I have entered has come from the fact of these are images that I went out to do because it's what I love doing the most, that I put them in exhibitions and they're selling, and now they've been recognised in an awards process by my peers. That's a really cool satisfaction. It's not feeling like I've got three different things. They're all lining up. And that's partly due to the fact that I've become very comfortable and own my style.
It really sounds like there's a lot of self-awareness in there, I guess, which can be hard earned at times, and a lot of courage, I guess, to be authentic and to stand up for yourself, regardless of the external validation or not. But yeah, it must be pretty satisfying to have all the ducks line up in a row when you're doing that, and you're holding a space with yourself, and the recognition is coming along in the sales as well.
Yeah, it is. I'm not sitting here having excuse my French, but having a wank about. It's like I'm looking at it and I'm going, when do you stop trying to, the stress that comes with entering awards multiple years in a row, just entering, you do well and you kind of feel relieved, but if you don't do well, then you have this other thing that happens, and it's like, you don't deserve that, because whether you do well or not do well, your intent and the amount of work you put on is the same. So really, the effort you put into things like an awards process or an exhibition should be primarily driven by a desire to discover what your visual voice is. That's why you should do it, and to be able to fine tune it and hone it. The feedback from an awards or an exhibition or showing your friends or putting them on a website to sell, the feedback is a way for you to understand how well you're communicating what it is you want to say or what you want to express. If people are recognizing it, bouncing to it, going, it makes me feel like this, and that's it, that's what I want, then that's great. And if it's not, it doesn't devalue the work. It just says you still got to fine tune a part of it to help people understand what you're trying to say. It's like learning a language.
So
for me,
I was going to say, like refining the communication that comes to mind.
It is. And that's really what style is about. It's about language. It's about visual language, communication, photography, writing with light. Now, put aside all the arguments about Photoshop versus straight out of camera and all of that crap. They're all relevant. They're all got a valid place in our industry and in what we do. To me, it's all about intent and about transparency. No pun intended. If you're entering awards and it says straight out of camera, great. If it says you can do what you want, great. It's all part of an evolving medium, and we need to explore it all. But if you pass off something as reality and it's a composited 43 shots, then that's where I kind of frown a bit and say, well, maybe you shouldn't do that.
Tony, we've just had a question, and it's not directly related to style, but we can possibly frame it that way. The question's, do you shoot full frame or medium format or anything like that? And I guess to that point, how much does your equipment affect your style or drive that?
It doesn't really, other then Paul talked about large format prints, and yes, I do look to produce work that is large format, because the spaces that I'm looking to have my work in, and the clients that I'm looking to attract are the people with foyers and office spaces and that I can have big format images that have impact. And to do that, I need medium format cameras. You don't have to, but I preferred, so I get not just the resolution, but I get a larger dynamic range. I mean, am I allowed to mention brands on here? I
suppose of course,
absolutely.
Yeah,
we've got no affiliations, Tony.
Good. So I work with Phase, obviously. I've been a Phase ambassador for a long time and shot with Phase for over 10 or 11 years. And so that affects your style insofar as, you can't shoot 15 frames a second on a Phase. Forget the fact that your hand would just about fall off with the weight. But so it does cause you to, that's right, it causes you to think a bit more about what you're doing, which I think is important. But the style, the voice, while it might be a little bit louder with a Phase or larger or bigger than life or whatever, the style's no different to my iPhone. And recently every now and then I'll drop a little image on Instagram and I'll put iPhone. And
I noticed that of late, yeah.
And somebody had a crack at me and said, are you just taking the piss now that you're doing them on your iPhone because you can? I said, well, I'm doing them on my iPhone because when I saw this, it was the only thing I had on me. I have no disillusion that, or false illusion that this image can now go in my exhibition. That's the sad part, because it's not, but you see a style there. You can see this is my voice. It might be a little bit quieter and maybe not as loud as it can do with a Phase, but it's me still saying things about what I see and feel and experience in the same way that I say it when I'm doing it with my other cameras. So I shoot with the D850.
You can borrow Luke's new 100 megapixel phone camera.
Yeah, I've got to look into it.
Be totally comparable.
Yeah, I mean, 100 megapixels isn't 100 megapixels, is it? So, but look, I think it also, the other thing about those heavier cameras, they force you to slow down and think a bit more, whereas the phone just bang, 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 and it's kind of disposable shots, and you can shoot what you have to. But I've got some amazing portrait shots on my phone, and I showed someone recently who was traveling. They were playing, and they said to me, "Can you help me use this little point and shoot camera?" I won't say the brand. And they bought it. So they just bought this camera, and it only cost them $500. And they just wanted to make sure they could use it because they're going on this big trip. I said, "So you didn't get a bigger camera?" I said, No, I just wanted something really easy and simple. And I said, "Okay." And then they pulled out their phone to write some notes down. I had my iPhone 12 Pro Max, which is the same as what I've got at the moment. And I said, "So you've got this phone and you want to play with this camera?" And he goes, Yeah. I said, "You realise you'll get a better photo off that phone than you will off this camera for the type of stuff you shoot, and you'll shoot it on that phone, edit it on that phone, output it on that phone, put it up on social media, send it to your friends way before you've even had a chance to download the other ones.
Yeah.
And they'll probably be as good or better if you just learn how to use this one first. So the style of how you shoot, I can go and exercise the way I see things with my phone just as easily. Which brings me to a point about style is I was a soccer player through most of my life, from the age of 5 till about 49, and I reached quite a high level in soccer. I captained WA's amateur side overseas and things, and I loved training, and yet I know a lot of guys along the years that I played soccer with didn't like training. They just wanted to play in the game, and I couldn't understand that because I was in love with playing football. So whether I was at training or in the backyard or whatever, I would play football. And I'm the same with photography. And I think if you want to allow your style to come through, don't limit yourself to the moments when you've got the best gear in the best space at the best time. If you feel an inkling or an instinct, that's your style putting its hand up, saying, "Hey, I've got something to say."
Yeah.
If you've got a phone and that's all you've got, exercise or practice, it's just training, and it's exercising that visual, vocal, expressive muscle that is the way that your style gets seen, and you've got to do it. If you don't do it, if you just wait until you've got everything lined up and the world's perfect and the sun's light's right and you've got the right camera and you bought the right lens and, you're to me, it's always, it's got to be everything all the time. Whatever's in front of you, use it.
Should we start translating that a little bit more visually, Tony? With
yeah, look, I was just thinking, I've got, a couple of pictures here, and we'll see, what they can, see if I can get these to work. I'm going to pick a section of the screen which should work. Can you see a picture of a little girl?
Sure can. Perfect.
Okay, it's not a landscape, but this goes back to early 1990s. This actually led to my concrete series because her dad, who I took this picture of, separated from his wife when this little girl was 16, and he approached me to, this is black and white and it's hand covered. That's how far back it is on film. Wow. And it might be obvious, you shoot a portrait, but for me, I look back and I realized that I loved simple pictures. I loved the opportunity to minimize what I was shooting, and I loved things being central. It doesn't mean every portrait I ever took was centered, but I didn't mind having space, and I like the minimalist attitude where there's something in this frame that I want you to be obviously looking at, and everything else has to balance around it with symmetry. And that became something that was, I saw even going forward. This is somebody that some of you may recognize. Does anyone know Jeremy from Nikon?
Jeremy from Nikon, yeah, I thought so, yeah.
So again, that central, everything leading into a point. And then, I moved on to areas where with my travel, which took me overseas, and I would take shots that most people wouldn't worry about. There's a guy in this shot, I don't know if you can pick him out, on the right-hand side. There's bins. This is on Venice Beach in a misty, overcast, flat type of day, But I wasn't conscious of style. I wasn't thinking about style. But the geometry in this and the symmetry, although this particular crop looks like it's slightly out, that telegraph pole's in the middle on the main one, is not that dissimilar to the type of square abstract aerials I shoot, One thing to look at, lots of space around it. It's about a simple type of composition, which I even then when I start, say, might look back at weddings, same thing, I had these very simple geometries that were taking place when everything seemed to be balanced, which was not necessarily the way everybody else was shooting at the time. And some would, some wouldn't. But my point is that there was a thread from way back with this sort of work I was doing. This image that we're looking at is probably at least 20 years old. There was something about these images where there was geometry in them. So for me, my style, it's got geometry. And I'm not saying that everybody should go out and try to focus on the geometry of their captures or compositions or the symmetry or, square. That's not the point. The point is I look back and see these things happening. The other thing that was probably coming through for me was deeper meaning, and probably one of the first images where I started to feel like I could create deeper layers of meaning. I mean, if I go back to that wedding shot there, there's obvious symbolisms and there's obvious analogies to, spirituality, religion, cross. Behind her is a painting on the wall of a shadow of a window in a church. It's a painting of that shadow of that window, and then she's under a spotlight. So she walked under it. I saw the cross on the picture, on the painting. I said, hold your veil out. The veil softens things and away you go. But, that sort of spiritual aspect was something that was fairly obvious. And then there was things like this picture, which I produced in about 2004. So it's about 15 years old, 16, 17 years old. Getting on. And this one was more about the story that I got told as I was on the river, in the Murray River, about they were banning petrol houses on the Murray River because the river was getting too toxic. There was salinity problems, but there was also toxicity problems from overflow of fuel, getting into the river. And there was a big cleanup, and talking to one of the local farmers, and I saw this picture and I took it. And when I took it, I don't know if you can actually see that for me, I looked at it and I thought it became a story for me, a narrative around resources, that we worship resources. We worship, two of the main resources we worship are sort of mineral wealth, and through gold, jewelry, but we also, worship things like, petrol, unleaded petrol, oil. So oil and gold are two of the staples in terms of things we worship that aren't necessarily good for an environment. But this is 2004 when climate change and things wasn't really out there. There was a few people making noises and everybody just sort of said, go away, what are you talking about? Never going to happen. But the irony that made this picture work for me was in the background are the three things that we do have to worship. And one is the air, which you can see is very grey, and one is the water, which again is grey, and the other is the trees or nature. And it became synonymous. And interestingly enough, I gave this image as on a beautiful art paper, a cotton rag. I think at the time it was Museo or one of those early ones. Yeah. And it was only a 10 by 10 inch print, not very big at all, on A4 paper or A3 paper, but 10 inch by 10. And I offered it at an exhibition, at an auction for a charity that was being run by the mining industry. And it was purchased by one of the big managers at Caltex who owned Ampol, and he paid $10,000 for it. Oh, wow. 17 years ago. And that was probably an image that not only did it, there's a whole layer of feelings for me. One was I'd got a story into a picture about how I felt about what we were doing that was wrong without shoving it down people's throats, because, at the auction, they loved it. And I said, I love this. It's such a great image. And yet he was probably responding to the way that the petrol Bowser looks like an icon, or like this sort of trophy being held up. The spotlight's on it, and it's got Ampol and it's gold. So in those two words, we kind of sum up, it's all about oil and it's all about, gold and silver. But all over this picture is this message that say, at what cost? Mm. Yeah. And I don't think he got that. But I knew that like a Trojan horse, I'd managed to get this image into someone's house that hopefully over time someone might notice things. So I realised that I could actually, auctions for charities, you don't necessarily get market value. You can get above market value and you can get below market value. And I'm under no illusion this was above market value at the time, because I was a nobody. Nobody really knew my name. And $10,000 for a 10 by 10 inch print wasn't market value. But maybe they knew something I didn't, going forward. So, but that changes things for me. Not long after, so I started to think about narrative and meaning and story, and yet in that picture, again, in terms of personal style, there was a deliberate layers of meaning that I was trying to implement into my picture by how I used colour, so colour as in saturation or hue or vibrancy, etc. How I used geometry and balance, leading lines. There's a deliberate middle horizon in that image, because it all leads to the horizon. That is eternity in the background, and that's, if you look at it, it's not leading us up or down. It's kind of all the jetty, everything's leading us into the background where it doesn't look so good. So let's hope it's not an inaccurate cognition. And then, I probably before that image was this image, and this one I was travelling with Peter Eastway and David Oliver, and we were in south of WA, and it was overcast, there were storms, there was 10-metre waves, boats had been cancelled, our ferries on the beach had been cancelled. And again, for me, it was the simplicity of just light. It was purely about the light hitting the waves when the clouds just broke for a moment. I got 3 frames off, literally, in the space of about 2 hours of torrential rain. It just broke, I took a shot, and this became a defining image for me, because it was the first time I really saw the beauty that could be exhibited when it's not a beautiful day. It was just something inherent about colour and light and shape and form. I don't do a lot of panos. I do shoot them, but I don't share a lot of them because everyone else does them, I suppose. It's not as congruent to the way I want to say things. But But this image kind of stood the test of time. It's still seen for me as I still find it a really nice image. And it was the first time when I was working in the early days with the very early aspects of Photoshop, and just feeling like when I looked at the file that the green in the water, which I was mesmerized by when the light hit it, wasn't quite translating in what I'd shared. So I had to bring it out a bit more. And, that's I started bringing up a little bit of saturation, a little bit of, luminosity, just to bring it out, not really go overboard, just bring it out. And then, of course, one that a lot of people are familiar with of mine was this one, which probably was when I felt I'd started to become a landscape photographer. And this was a few years after that wave shot.
Yeah, I'll never forget seeing this in person time when it first came around. Yeah, it really struck me.
And there's a luminosity in this, but there's also a geometry, a central figure is the trees, and then there's a story running from left to right. And I'm sure some of you have heard me describe the cold light on the left, the warm light on the right, and the unfolding of day. And there's a narrative in this that's quite strong to see. And interestingly enough, Ken Duncan and I were both keynoting at one of the APSCON conferences, and we were the two keynotes. And we were having a chat, because, like you do your talks and that, but we got together and sort of had a quiet drink. And he said, we've got to do a print swap, which I was, completely honoured by. Ken's an icon of it, been around a long time and does a certain thing, has his own style. And I said, oh, that'd be an honour, like if you can find one of mine you like. And this was about 4 years ago. And he said, I already know which one I like. I've liked it for years. And I said, oh, which one? It was this one. This was the image he wanted. And I said, are you serious? Like it was shot on an 8 megapixel camera and cropped. It's as noisy as all buggery. When I compare it to a 2021 phase 1 file, it's as noisy as all buggery. But he said, no, he said that one spoke to me the minute I saw it. And so he's got this print on his wall or in his collection. So, yeah, it kind of taught me that you can guide people around an image, and that's what I like to do. And in terms of my style, I use light and texture and line to move people around the image, to show them or share with them what I felt and what's in the story, what's in the picture that you can't see. You can't see daybreak and you can't see the sun, but you can feel daybreak on the left where the clouds are blue and the cold mist is rolling in, and you can see the daylight and the day breaking because you can see the cloud breaking up on the right where the trees are coming through. And in the foreground, you get the feeling of the middle of the day, and then it's kind of rotates back to night. So that's why it works so well. And yet for me, I still look at it and it just feels like an okay picture that I took on a hot air balloon ride. But I see that I was driven to make sure there was some balance and some symmetry and a good use of colour. Most of my images do have minimal colour and so on. So around the same time, I had this one which was entered in and did quite well. And most of these have been in awards and done reasonably well. But again, this was just a bridge down in a foggy morning. And it was the symmetry. I just had to I love the reflection and I love the simplicity of it. And I think that's, at the time, you don't recognise it. Inside each of these pictures is an element of your style showing through. There's constants. There's foundational principles that you don't even realise you have. And we all have similar ones, I suppose, but they are slightly different. We put different weight on different things. So, that one there, again, a lot of noise. It's an older file. It was probably shot on a 6 or 8 megapixel capture, cropped. So, but it ended up as a 24-inch print, and I've sold several of those. It goes well. And, over the years, same thing, minimal colours. I don't have lots of colours. I tend to have 2 colours, maybe 3. I tend to have this sort of, a lot of central symmetry with my work. I don't tend to have, third on this side or a third. I tend to have more of this simple balance. And I think for me, what I realise is when I have this equal balance rather than a 1/3 type thing, I'm pushing people into my picture to the back. I think that's part of what that style is doing, and whether that's what should be done, I don't really care. It's what I do. I'm trying to push people into the picture by this central composition. That's what it tends to do. And then I started to move around a bit with my thinking, and I suppose this image here was, again, when I was exploring that narrative, and this is on another trip over to the States, and it's this was called The Traveller. It's one of my favourite 5 pictures that I've ever photographed, because it's just got so much personal meaning about carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, about we often trudge our way through and we never look up. You know, you can look up at any time and see where you are. And if you don't look up, you'll be, you know, they talk about if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a noise? And I look at this and think, when you're trudging along with your head down, you feel like there's nothing to look at because you haven't looked up to find out if there is. I don't know if that makes sense. So this part of my style is the fact that I want my pictures to mean more than just be pretty. The pictures that I choose to share do have a deeper meaning for me. They all do. And whether they get that meaning gets across to others or not, I'm not sure, but they do for me. But, you know, moving to something like this one where I was moving into the compositing type things, again, you can see there's a central symmetry. Everything's kind of leading you into that target. It's not necessarily right in the middle, but it's pulling you in. So, you know, there's not necessarily an uncommon parts of style. A lot of us are trying to do things like this. But when I add up all the little bits and pieces that I find in all my pictures, they become the facets of your style, and everybody's slightly different of what we're trying to say and how we try to say it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that the boy out at Cottesloe? The thing?
Yeah. So this was my wife had done her first solo crossing to Rottnest.
I was just going to ask you if it was about her. Yeah.
And in this image, I was sitting playing, and this is in the days when I was compositing a lot. Nowadays, my images that you see that are in exhibition or awards, they're all single shot. I don't stitch, I don't stack. They're all single shot, and I just work with a single shot image. But I can composite, and this is going back probably 12, 13, 14 years, and it's called The Swimmer, and I gave it to my wife as a gift, as a sort of acknowledgement of what she'd strived to achieve, where you swim from Cottesloe, where, as Luke observed, it is the boy at the bell, and it's where you start, and you swim 20 kilometres to Rottnest. But in order to do that, there's a lot of steps. So you'll see the steps in the background. And in this picture, and it's hard to see on a screen like this, but the print, you'll see things like coral. You'll see a soft coral on the left. That was at the Barrier Reef when we were there, and she was swimming. There's jellyfish. They were in the river during one of her training swims. In the bottom on the left, you may just make out the picture coming from the bottom left corner, angled towards, which is her swimming upside down underwater, and targeted in. And one of the things I noticed with the swimming is there's only a very few number of souls that do these big swims, but there's a lot of people who are fascinated and watch and observe. And in the top right, you'll see 4 figures, almost like the 4 horsemen. And I was trying to figure out how to get the sense of a tank, how to create 3 dimensions. And I figured that if I could put people on the other side, like they were looking through a window, you'd then feel like she's in a tank of water. And in that picture are Les Walkling, Johan van Kaan from New Zealand, Rick Syme from Perth, and John Bowden, I think he's up in Queensland. 4 photographers and myself have been on a bit of a mini workshop, one we put together ourselves to learn some private stuff privately, and they gave me another facet of this image. So it's made up of about 11 different images, and each one of them contributes to telling the story, so the elements of the story. So this was that time when I was playing with compositing to create story. And back then I probably felt more like I needed to use different parts to tell the different parts of a story. But what's happened over time is I've realised that the part that is my style is telling the story, the type of stories I want to tell. That's my style. This was one method, compositing. I need to show this, I need to show that. In more recent times, I've now moved to see if I can open up something different. But I've now moved to telling stories with one image, and that's where I get challenged more. So, you know, if I look at, say, something like these sort of things, these were my early aerials. These are 15 years old. And, you know, these pictures hang in retirement villages in Perth. And there's a whole series of those. There was this one, this one, this one, this one. They're all hanging. I can't get them bigger than about 20 inch square because of what they were shot on. They were shot out of a helicopter over Whitehaven Beach. And, you know, they were things I was doing even before I was doing aerials. This was going back, this is 15, 16 years old. And again, simple elements within a picture. This was called Innocence. And I was shooting Green's Pool because everybody shot Green's Pool in Denmark. And as I walked away, I heard laughter. And I turned back and I saw 3 boys playing with the ball. And I thought it just was this instant symbol of laughter. So I wanted to communicate that. And again, I used colour to bring back the candiness of children, this cartoon feel. I wanted to create that because that was part of my style. Is this making sense?
Yeah,
hopefully.
absolutely.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense when you see it translated visually like this, Tony. And getting more aware that there's lots of different methods to imbue that communication, whether it's color or design or composition or compositing, and just help me being a little bit more self-aware about which aspects of that I'm using to speak.
And, like if you look at a specific type of body of work, this is 2005, 2006, and I've got several editions of this collection hanging in boardrooms of concrete companies. And this was floating concrete, which was a composite. And, there's a ripple in the concrete, which was an image of a boat trip in Florida and on a fishing trip after a seminar. And there's sunset from somewhere else, but basically it was a grey scene on a wet day of a tilt panel. And that was another one that changed things for me because it kind of made me feel like I could composite in a way that was recognisably of quality because it got that sort of recognition. And then I started looking for other ways, this collection built up. And, again, I was playing with the concept of, when you look at construction workers and are they people who came into this industry or are they people that were always in this industry because at the age of 4 and 5 and 6, they were playing with Meccano or Lego and they were building things with shapes. So when you go into a construction site, before all the trims get put on it, all you see is the bare concrete, the circular pads that go on or go over the top of sewerage areas or whatever. And if you step back and just look at it in a different way, you see building blocks. You see the sort of Meccano sets that they used to build, and maybe they just got attracted to it as little kids and never stopped playing with it,
One thing I've noticed, Tony, sorry to interrupt as well, is do you think you do use square for aspect ratio quite a lot? Do you think that's part of your style as well in terms of?
Absolutely, yeah, it is, because I think, and I've learnt little bits along the way. People like Les Walken talk about the panoramic being the way we see the world. So if you stand in front of a big pano, you kind of get lost in the image. Whereas if it's a square, it's not how we see the world. It's kind of disconnected or disjointed from us embedding ourselves in what we're seeing and forget we're looking at something and feeling like we're there. And I like the idea of it being a separate statement. It's an object unto itself. But I also think that the square gives me the opportunity for my symmetry to work better because, panoramic or a vertical, your symmetry works best one way or the other. In a horizontal, you've kind of got more room on the horizontal plane to balance things out and less up and down. Square, it doesn't matter. You can actually have 4-way symmetry. And I think that inherently, that's the mathematician in me looking for an inherent balance or skeleton that I can build my stories on. I look at this one.
Like, as you said earlier, Tony, it tends to focus you a bit more inward as well.
Yeah, everything I do seems to have
into
this
the image.
diagonals pushing you towards the image and taking you into the middle.
And centralizing it, yeah.
This is shot from a castle in Germany, looking down. It's an 800-year-old castle. But again, I was pulling people into the picture. It became part of the collection. So it was called 321, sand and cement and all of that. But each of them had their own story. This one ended up being critiqued by, it was at Biennale. I was a featured artist at one of the Ballarat Biennales, and in the magazine they critiqued it. They liked the mirror that was sitting up against the wall, but the irony is it's actually an opening in the wall. It's not a mirror. And there's a brick. And as soon as I saw this when it was happening, I thought this is a story about the first brick. We hear the analogy and the cliche of the first brick, the first shovel of sand when you're building something. And I think for me, this was just reinforcing as I was coming along that this is about being able to share ideas. So stories became, instead of everything being about a story, now I was moving to, or as well as I was creating narratives around concept, around ideas, about, like this image here is about compression of time, because if you break it down on the bottom, you can just see this Rio mesh, those steel bars, those ribbed bars that you use for steel foundation before they pour the concrete around it on the floor, and it strengthens the concrete. So that's about the foundation and the strength. When you look at the main wall, you'll see what looks like peeling paint, which was actually an image of peeling paint that I overlaid on this image, because what I was trying to do was compress the moment from the first brick to the day this thing decays and starts to wear out. And that could be 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years. And the brick represents the day one, and the peeling paint represents the closing in on the end of its life. So, but it's a picture of a wall, simple as that. So I realized that within my style, I was trying to tell stories, but they don't necessarily have to be literal narratives. They can also be ideas that I wanted to share. So if you look at things like, if I go to say something like this, which is more into what people currently know me for. This was about 3-4 years ago, maybe longer. It was kind of when I was moving from what was literal in terms of aerial to what was more symbolic, figurative. Yep. Aqua Vita, which means water of life. You're looking at it.
I've noticed you tend to use Latin quite a lot in your recent work and in your exhibition and things like that. What's the sort of process around that, and how are you drawn to that, link to that sort of style of language?
I think it's about, like, if I write, I don't want things to be too literal. It's kind of my titling. And I was explaining this to one of my mentor clients this morning. My titling is designed to be seamlessly connected to the picture. I don't want to assume the viewer's illiterate. I don't want to, it's like looking at a picture and going, green tree pattern underwater, ripples in the sand. It's kind of giving away the obvious. I want to add to the experience, and part of that can be making people stop and think about the title. Why have you given it that? Rather than have a title that people go, oh yeah, that's what I would call it. Yeah. So a lot of my titling is designed to just add another layer of mystery or another layer of discovery. This one here, Night. People go, okay,
Tony, just a personal reflection on titling, because that, obviously I shoot a lot of similar work, and that it's so abstract, it doesn't necessarily have a literal interpretation. And sometimes I get caught between adding mystery by a title, or even potentially the danger of taking it away and limiting the way people can interpret an image by steering them in a certain direction. Do you find that a challenge for you, or you just stick to your guns and just wait till an image kind of speaks to you enough to give you one? Because sometimes they don't give you a title straight away. It takes time for it to sort of ripple through. But it comes up for me constantly. Just that's a very personal question, but
no, not at all. Look, I don't tend to title when I enter pictures in competitions necessarily, but I think at an exhibition, I'm looking to assist people in an understanding of what I'm thinking about when I produce it. By not having such a literal titling, it allows them the freedom to create their own relationship with it before they go and discover what I thought it was about. Sometimes I choose to take them in a direction because it might be too abstract a concept, and I think, well, I'll give them a little nudge in a direction so they can kind of make the jump from there rather than expect them to go the whole way by themselves. But I think that's a personal preference. I generally don't competitions is a set of rules. You get to understand in terms of competition where a title may or may not assist it, or a label. But I think in an exhibition, it's slightly different. People like the idea of, okay, you're an artist, you produce this. What are you trying to say? But by giving it a slightly level of obscurity, it gives them the opportunity to sort of think about it and then go, okay, fair enough. I mean, this was going to be called Tipping Point, but, I changed my mind. But often I find a title comes, the image gives you its title. You don't.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm labeling things. I'm just allowing them to tell me what they should be called.
Nicely put.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Well, sometimes I feel like that takes time.
Yeah, I think it does. And some of them come to you straight away, and some of them you sort of look at and think, I don't know what it is, and it's not till you work on it and until certain elements of the picture come out as you're working with them that you suddenly go, okay, I know what this picture's about. And it's not that you didn't feel it when you shot it, because, this is the thing that I think I get asked a lot. Do you go up there looking to make that picture? Like, you go up there, are you looking for something? Yeah, you are, but you don't know what it is you're looking for. And that sounds really weird, but I don't think you are. I don't think you often do know what you're looking for. That's kind of really weird, like Girt By Sea is a great example.
Relate to that very well, Tony.
Girt By Sea is a great example where we've gone up to look for something without knowing what it is we're looking for. So,
do you find, Tony, that with a body of work that large, that when you go back to it after a period of time, that other images that you would have overlooked or moved past sort of come to life and start speaking to you?
Yes. I've found the images from Girt By Sea that I can't believe they weren't in the exhibition.
Yeah.
I look at them now and I think, what? Why aren't they in the exhibition? What was I thinking, or what wasn't I thinking? So, if I just look at these these are from my very first solo exhibition at Winton Cove. They're good aerial shots. This is going back a fair while now, but nowadays you could shoot them with a drone. So to me, they're aerial photographs. There's not a lot of, I could sit here and bullshit and make up stuff about, what they mean, but they're just aerial photographs. That's kind of what they are. You look at something like that. There was a few that was starting to share. I was starting to have a glimpse of what my style was. Like this one, this image here, East West, is about, it's just boats. It actually, when you see the print, because on your screens it probably looks like it's pure black. It's not. It's a deep blue, and there is detail right through the print. And it's about 1200 mil by 1200 mil, so it's big. And it's about that moment when people go travelling in boats where they cross paths, and people wave, like when you're travelling in the country. You don't know these people. And it's kind of strangers, strangers who I've never met, or familiar friends who are strangers. And you wave as if you know each other because you're sharing an experience and you're crossing paths. And I just orbited a couple of times waiting for these boats to cross paths. And I can look back on that one and see the beginning of something. Whereas this one, maybe it was about a relevance to maps. Whereas, these are just aerial shots of the beach. Maybe it's more of on a shallower level, it's about the physicality of the textures in the water and the textures in the sand and the border. When you go to something like this one, which is Brighton Beach, This was where I started to look at playing with people's minds. And again, there's, all of these images that I'm showing you, whether they're older, portrait, wedding, there's a simplicity. Yes, there's a style that involves around square. There's a minimal elements, and minimal elements give maximum impact if they're done properly. Where if you have too many things, then you've got a real juggle to get everything to work together to give a congruent message. But the perspective shift, and this is where I probably started to feel like I was starting to explore perspective shifting. You look at this and at first instance, you almost feel like you're looking at the sky and what's underneath the ground, like a cross-section of the earth. But
Tony, just a seg note when you're talking about, because Linton K is a beautiful gallery in Perth. I actually made a point of flying there this year actually to see your latest work, Tony. And when you're talking about personal style, which is kind of what we're referring to in the show, it's really something I think you need to be quite conscious of and aware of if you're going to start approaching and working with a gallery, because there's almost like this expectation that you have an intended purpose and thematic links and an understanding of the intent behind your work collectively. So did you feel like that was did you have that in place before you approached the gallery, or did you work on that together over time? Because you've been with them for quite a long time.
I think it evolves. The early days was a collection of work which I looked at and thought, they're good area shots, and they were, but I wouldn't, none of those. Maybe one might get in now, but over time I started to understand it was about me having a voice rather than me producing all of these very pretty pictures, So as I moved through the different exhibitions, you kind of, if you take not the last exhibition, but the one before was probably the first one where I started to feel like I was, what's the word I'm looking for? I was starting to generate images that were really about the concepts that I felt, and I was getting a very clear, congruent voice. Aqua spiritus, water spirits, it was about the spirit of place, and it was about a place of water with chemical, beta carotene coming through, but I could see and feel the spirits of the place in this environment, in this image, and I was starting to tell stories or share concepts visually. Fleur, God, now I'm aqua fleur, weeping gold. So, you look at something like that, and it was about how things are dripping back in, and this golden colour, or arbor, which is about trees, and looking at a mud flat and seeing tree. And we've all shot mud trees. Everyone's sort of been and done that. But I was starting to find visual analogies really strongly. Crucis, cross. It's about those iconic symbols through history, through cultures, things that everybody recognises and you look at. It's also a reference to Burning Man and about that freedom that we get from that. But I was feeling very comfortable once I got to this exhibition, which was after, I think it was number 5, the Linton and Kay as a soloist, where I was really looking at the work as each of them was a visual concept being described through pictures, like a concept being described through pictures. And some of those concepts can't you can't write them down without give away everything. You've got to have pictures as well.
Tony, how much does your relationship with the gallery and your intent to continue creating bodies of work for it influence your kind of process of shooting and your thought process? Or, are you already sort of, I imagine ahead of time, having done a lot of different bodies of work, that there's parts of you that are reaching forward into where you want to go next and how you're going to collate that together or link it together as a body of work?
I don't worry about jump. I don't think I have to connect each exhibition. And I don't even think in an exhibition that, 20 images or whatever have to necessarily connect, although that makes a big difference and it does help, as long as you can find a way, as long as you can give a reason. So you can do a retrospective, for instance, and that's a connection between a whole bunch of different images, which talks about evolution of style or evolution of your taste or what you want to say. But I think it's more that a gallery might recognise, they might recognise that you have a voice that people like to listen to. You know, you have a way of sharing what you see that people like to listen. It's a different world. It's not the photography world. Even though if you're doing a photographic collection, there's people who take pictures and there's people who use pictures for different reasons. And one of the ways is to use them to express a concept or an idea or a philosophy or a story or an awareness, you know, whether it's to do with climate change or save the whales, whether it's to do with your project on, you know, the men project. I forget what it's called. It's called Men and, what was your, Paul? What was your project called?
Oh, Men with Heart.
Men with Heart, that's it. So, you know, there's an underlying foundation or principle that you're trying to show various facets around, but part of the purpose, I assume, is to raise awareness about something. And part of that purpose is also not just to make people aware of it, but to maybe send a silent message to people who don't want to talk about it, that it's okay to talk about it, or reach out for help, or so on. So it becomes a vehicle to share a whole lot of messages that aren't always easy for people to share. So whatever the purpose of the pictures, they are a form of communication or a form of saying something. And for me, these images were about individual concepts that are shared through the medium that I produce, which is abstract, simple shapes. They're aesthetically pleasing. Their quality is, you know, supposedly very, you know, high standards, and people can put them on a wall and enjoy them just for the aesthetic quality of it. They can use the colour to balance out their decor, but hopefully they also connect with images that have other reasons about, you know, journeys, geometria, which means, you know, geometry. You could tell stories about changing paths and hitting obstacles and, you know, taking a different tack and things like that. But I leave that part of it for people to apply their own. I just talk about the geometry in this one and let people make their own minds up. You know, this one has a bit more of a deeper visual. It screws with your head a bit because it's got a shift in perspective and it's about horizons and things like that. But
Tony,
I think as long as...
What do you think, what is allowed more by the choice of presenting in a large scale? What does it sort of allow to happen that wouldn't happen otherwise? I'm just a little bit curious. Because it's really impactful in its own way, but different things happen. You're sort of impressed on you in a different way when you.
When it's bigger, when it's big, you know, and I think you said you saw a continuum. So the pictures you stand in front of, you know, the outside world is less distracting because of the physical nature of the picture. You're standing there and it's encompassing and enveloping your vision. So you get less chance to have any distraction. Whereas if you look at something small, you know, even now everybody's sitting at home, they're looking on the screen, there'll be the picture on the screen and around it will be, you know, titling or, you know, things written across the top of your screen, and there might be a bunch of crap along the bottom of your screen, and then there's the bottom of your keyboard, and then there's your notes that you got sticked on the side, and then there's your second screen with your emails, and all of that stuff's distracting. Whereas when you make it big, you can really, it's like shutting everything else down and quietening all the voices down and you're the only voice in the room. So that's part of it. Quality-wise, I think people can physically stand there and appreciate the detail, so you get more out of a picture rather than just, you know, the beauty of large format, quality large format, is you get the holistic view of what you see from a distance, but you can walk up and see all the pictures in between and all the micro facets of it. And it's like trying to read someone's face from a distance. You kind of, I think their eyes are open, I think they're smiling. But if you walk up and stand a metre away and you're talking to them, you notice every micro facial muscle, even if you don't consciously register, you're seeing everything. And it's all there, it's all contributing to the way you respond and what you interpret.
Yeah, I can vouch for that.
You know, simple symbols that in this one. This was a couple of, you know, not that long ago, but, you know, whether it's about a recognition of masculinity or whether it's more of a feminine type of thing because of the soft curves and things like that. And then there's images like this one. If I go back one exhibition to Lux, there's an image that's very, what's the word for it? Very feminine, and it's called, let's see if I've got it here.
Tony, if you're not so directed about having all the images to be together necessarily, then what's your selection process for curating a singular exhibition?
I've got to be proud of them. I got to look at them and they've got to have, I think they've got to have depth. If I can't find deeper meaning than just they meet the physical, if they only just meet photographic criteria, it's sharp, nice composition, it's balanced. Yes, it seems to be about something. If that's all it's got, then it's not going to make it. It's got to have something deeper. It's got to not necessarily be super clear. It's just got to open up a doorway to a whole way of thinking. This one, Terra Mater. Terra Mater means Mother Earth. So it's about that connection with Earth. It's about the maternal instinct. It's about nurture. And there's an obvious symbolism in it that people look at and go, oh, it looks like this, but it's got to be more than that. So the colours and everything about it have to contribute to that narrative. So in order to make the cut, the process I will go through will be, okay, here's 50 images that I look at and they capture me. I feel a connection. I feel like there's something there. Then I'll look at them all, and anything that's not quality-wise, sharp, or if it lacks in quality, because I'm not perfect. I go out and shoot and come back with a percentage of images that aren't sharp. There's camera shake, or there's a bounce, or I got it wrong. I've made mistakes. They can't go in. Doesn't matter if aesthetically they look beautiful. If as a thumbnail they look amazing, they just won't make the cut because they're going to be viewed at 1200 mil. So part of my selection process is they have to meet a quality criteria. Once I've got past that, then it's about the strongest 20 images in terms of, do each of them have a single concept that I can truly identify and work with in terms of my editing processes. I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but that's kind of the best I can come up with, I think, at this point.
Oh, yeah, there's no rules. I was just a bit curious.
Like if I look at Continuum, this is the more recent one. You look at an image like this, and this is the title picture for that exhibition. That when I shot that was already going in the exhibition. When I shot it in the air, I looked at it, that was it. Right. I knew that was going to go in. But the title of the exhibition, interestingly enough, 3 months before the exhibition, the gallery needs the title of the exhibition and a brief artist statement so they can start marketing and a couple of images. So I sent them an image and a title on the deadline, and then I rang them the next morning because I woke up in a cold sweat because I realised that what I told them would be the title just didn't fit. It just wasn't going to work. And during the night, because I was sweating on it, the title came to me, and it was actually the title of the exhibition was the title of one of the prints, and that was Continuum. That in searching for what this next exhibition was about, I came around to an understanding, and this is probably part of style, that the beauty of style is it's you discovering yourself over time. So I became aware that each exhibition is just an uncovering of another layer of what I like to capture and how I like to share what I see. So continuum is a word that describes that continuation of a journey. And this image alludes to the rise and fall, the ups and downs, the moments when things blossom, the moments when things don't. There's dark areas, there's ravines and valleys where it's not so good, but at the top of those hills, those peaks, there's all these little trees where everything's just blossoming and everything's growing and ideas are sprouting. And that's what continuum is about. And that works really well for that reason. If I then move to, it looks like I've got a corrupt file in here, interesting. If I go to, say, this one, which is called Locus, this image is...
So what's it called again, Tony?
Locus, which is a place. And this image, when I saw it again, was an image I looked at and thought, oh my God, I'm just seeing layers of ideas with this symbolism. And it not only, it unlocks, depending on where we've been and what we've done, it'll unlock things that we may have forgotten about. It unlocks ideas and concepts that we may have been thinking about and hadn't truly understood. It unlocks parts of our unconscious. in the same way that an obvious symbol like a cross unlocks memories and experiences and things that we relate to a cross shape. But for me, this image is very strongly about creativity and the search for inspiration, that the red is an island and is that area that we feel isolated in this white void. We're looking for a new idea. We're looking for a flash of inspiration. And that's what the gold is. It's that flash of inspiration that's cutting in. And then on the top of this little mound is this tree, which represents growth. It represents the seed becoming something. And when I looked down and I saw that green tree is actually just sand in that shape. So you see the raw file of this, and that's exactly what's in the picture. And all I've done is I haven't even changed the colours. I've just brought out what was a subtle yellow in the salt, a subtle red on the mound, and a subtle greeny olive colour. And I've just brought those colours out in order for me to tell the story that I want to tell, in the way that an orchestra conductor chooses which instruments to play the loudest and which ones to keep quiet.
Yeah, nice.
And a different conductor does it differently. So each of these is about something like that, you know. Whoops, I thought I had a corruption. Looks like that. I chucked it on a USB and I noticed a couple of files had an issue. This one here, Torrent, is just about branching, a continuous branching and branching. It's about ideas, you know. This is a great symbolism for imagination. That you can break it.
It's definitely one of those images, Tony, that the translation to print is an immensely different experience.
Oh yeah, because it's a 1.5 meter square print.
Yeah, the level of detail and the structuring, the microstructuring through this that you're really present to in the print is really hard to do, which is why Tony needed to zoom in. But it's, yeah, to me, that's a particular image that speaks volumes about the purpose behind and presenting it large.
What might be interesting is to show you just a couple of pictures that have not been exhibited, and I don't even think any of them have been in awards, because I call them the near misses. But it's not to say that they're necessarily bad pictures. Some of them have gone into some online competitions, but, you know, they're pictures I've played with that I quite enjoy. You know, there's quite good detail in all of these. I mean, this is a small JPEG, so I probably can't go that close, but there are images that I've had around that you know, these are the sort of things that get close. These are the ones that are in the top 25, but the exhibition's only 20 images. So this just missed out on being in the last one, as did this one, as did this one, as did this. You know, and it's not that I don't think they're good, as did this. And so these have never seen the light of day. This is the first time anybody besides myself has even looked at these pictures.
Wow. Thanks for sharing.
But, you know, they're things I've done that you know, you look at the detail in that, it's just incredible. So as a big print, this would be mind-blowing, but it kind of just didn't make the cut. You know, this one here I had a similar one that did make the cut, which was called Quantum. Yeah. This one didn't, but, you know, again, just, you know. So, you know, I think in terms of when you talk about style, it's also about recognising that you don't have to say everything you can say. It's when we start to choose what we're about, and we're happy to leave the things we're not. So I can go and shoot the sunsets, and I do, you know, I'll go down with my wife sometimes and spend an evening at the beach, and I'll wander around with my phase and take some pictures, and she might be swimming or she might take some pictures of her own, but I'll have a play, but I'll probably never enter them in a competition. I'll probably never put them in an exhibition, but I might end up selling one or two to a client who says, have you got anything of this? You know, I've donated recently 5 pictures to a surf club for the kids, and we did 5 prints, and none of them were aerials. They were all shot from the beach with long exposures and just beautiful soft colours, ethereal twilight and stuff like that. And, you know, we raised $4,000 for the nippers, and they're over the moon. So, but they've never been in an exhibition, you know. So it's okay to have images that don't make the cut. Sometimes they don't make the cut because I look at them and go, well, you know, there's a lot of people. I'm seeing I've seen variations of this out there, and I think, well, it's not really new and now groundbreaking. I might leave this one. It doesn't have to go in just because I shot it. This one here's got some beautiful ethereal whites cutting through it. This one here is technically a beautiful picture. It's got amazing colours and incredible detail. When you really zoom in on it, it shows it. It's got these beautiful things, blues and greens, and it's got this relief in it. It's almost three-dimensional. It looks like an embossed sheet, but it's never been in like in an exhibition, and I've not entered in a print competition or anything. So, and I'm okay with that. It's kind of, it feels more decisive, if you like, more deliberate. So when I do put something in, it's like, that's what I want to say, not what, that's not, that struggle to find 20 good pictures to put in an exhibition. Think about, I know a lot of people talking about competitions, what are my 4 best pictures? And I encourage that, when you've got to do that. But you've also sometimes got to say, well, these are the 4 pictures I want to share, which is different and not necessarily the 4 best pictures. That's when you're starting to, I think, be comfortable or more comfortable, with your style. So none of these. Now here's one that missed out on Continuum. It was the 21st image. It didn't make it. Now I'll probably end up selling some of these separately to somebody who says, have you got anything else similar? Because it's a beautiful complement to that Continuum image.
Continuum image, yeah.
But it didn't make the cut. And it doesn't mean they're bad. So I'd like to encourage the people listening to accept that if they don't make the cut, that's okay. Sometimes missing the cut just means you're being decisive about what you want to share, and that's okay. These are a lot of things that don't make the cut. This is just me playing with pictures, and yet you'll see that same. I love playing with images where I'm looking for symmetry, but the balance is very complicated. You've got to weigh, things aren't equally in the same place, but they've got to still make the image feel like it's balanced. So how do you balance something that's up in the corner and dark? You might need a few extra things over here and, push people around with arrows and symbols. This I did enter in a competition recently, so that's one that sometimes I just play with colour. And I'm looking to emulate some of my influences. I get like William Turner, the artist, is somebody, the way he plays with ethereal light, but I couldn't enter an exhibition. They're just straightforward landscapes. I'm not saying, I don't think they're bad. I just think they're not necessarily what I want to produce for my exhibitions. Simple.
Gotcha.
But pictures that are sort of showing that, it's me looking. That's how I identify my style, I suppose, because you produce this quality work. I'd like to think it's quality, and then you say these ones are really me with an individual voice, and these are me exploring other ways of saying the same things. And I'm happy with musos. Musos. I always love the analogy of music, and you get the musos who just love to play acoustic. It doesn't mean they don't go and play electric or play, they might love country, but they'll go and try a few other songs, and maybe every now and then they include one in their repertoire, but this is what they do. This is who they are. And I think that's important to understand. And then Girt By Sea is a good example of coming together of an understanding that
incredible.
The project is to, travel around the country, to explore, to discover, to uncover, to bring back an experience and share the experience of discovery rather than a record or a documentary. But within it, I felt free to just use my style. Dennis and I went out and that's what we did. And the images that made the cut, and, it is a true cut when you get to 100 in an exhibition from over 80,000 images over a month. They've all, again, that symmetry. So the ones I'm showing you are the ones that I captured. We both captured different. I did the editing across the body of work, but we both captured images at the same time. But simple symmetries, simple geometries, simple analogies, just simple things that people look at and they can appreciate the color palettes. They can appreciate the beautifulness of it, but there's also a balance, which I suppose is part of my style coming through. Simple geometry is my style.
How long did you have that concept in mind, Tony, before you sort of brought it to life?
I think, in all honesty, the idea was something that I could reflect back on and see it as a curious thought when I was a kid. Honestly, I think I said it in the interview on the video that I just remember as a kid wondering what Girt meant, and what is it about, it kind of fascinates me, things like that. So sometimes and when at the end of the day, I suppose Girt By Sea is a great analogy in a large way of what each picture I'm talking about is about. And it's how do you share in visual terms the concept of surrounded by water, and at the same time help people understand how big something is, how big the coast is, how big the trip would be, how long it would take, by having a whole variety of many different colours and shapes and textures and forms, all telling a different part of the same story. You're kind of sharing the concept of Girt By Sea, and it kind of is summed up in that T.S. Eliot, set out on our exploring, and when we return back to the place we started, discover it for the first time. So we come back, and it's only when you complete it that you understand what Girt By Sea means, So again, my way of telling the story, if you like, my imagery of the story, of the journey, was going to always be simplicity, around texture, shape, colour and form. The texture, shape, colour and form are the alphabet, and the style is the language and the dialect that I use,
Oh, nice way to put it.
Yeah. So you think of aerial, I look at talented aerial photographers, yourself, Paul, and I think Australia's got a really, we have more than our fair share of super talented aerial photographers. And I think we're all sort of messing around in the same language, but we've all got a dialect. And I think that dialect is what you could call as our style, how we use the same alphabet.
So what is it that drew you to the aerial perspective in the first place, Tony?
I think it was actually a nexus for me. It was a coming together of an inherent need for order. I'm actually a chaotic person who thrives on finding order amongst chaos. So I think, what was the question again? I'm just trying to think how I could put it.
Well, I mean, you've visually moved, from land-based and concept-based into aerial, but we didn't really ever discuss, what actually drew you into the air in the first place.
I think initially it's the novelty. It's different. I think that's the first thing for everybody, is that your first aerial flight is quite an experience. There's no who you are. I think you go up and it's like, wow, this is so different. And it can be quite an impactful thing for some people. But I think for me, I love the idea that you can share stories with a different perspective. You can talk about the same things in a way that people they don't often recognize them at first. Because any of these images, you could stand somewhere on the ground within that frame and not see what you're seeing, and may not even recognize it.
Yeah.
You could blindfold someone and put them in most of these places and they would have no idea that they're within that image that they saw as an aerial, and vice versa. Someone could stand on a beach and you show them an aerial and they could look at it and you go, you've actually been here. No, I haven't, never seen it before in my life. And the deeper message in that is that shifting perspective brings different understanding. It brings new understanding. And I think that's a worthwhile concept to share. So part of the underlying message that I probably put out there is that shifting perspective brings new understandings, and that can be applied across life. In any way, shape, or form. If you look at the same thing that you've looked at, but in a slightly different way with a different perspective, you will gain a different understanding and new knowledge. And that more rounded viewpoint and that greater understanding brings tolerance, brings patience. I think that's important. So that's kind of, if you want to get esoteric about my journey, my goals, what's behind my art, there's two things I'd probably nail it down to. One is the observation that for me, I see myself as a witness, and I witness the dance between the water and the light. And I say that in statements, and I write that in my website and all of that. That's what fascinates me, that dancing between water and light, which is why most of my work that gets exhibited, most of the work that people see generally tends to be water and light, even if it's just glimpses of water on a salt lake. There's something about that, or the effect of water and light reflecting off it. Mm. And the other part that's probably deeper and an incentive and a motivation is shifting people's perspectives about something brings new understandings. So often in my motivational speaking, and that's kind of behind my mentoring, my coaching, helping people get confidence in what they're doing, shifting the way they look at photography and why they do it and what they're doing and how they're doing it can help them gain a greater understanding. And sometimes that's all it takes for them to move forward.
Tony, do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Like, I mean, it's something you've been doing for quite a while and with a lot of thought, and I imagine you've got pretty wide body of people in the world that have been influenced by your guidance.
Yeah,
is that how do people approach you about that, and how do they get involved?
So, well, the website will have it, tonyhewitt.com. There's stuff about whether it's simple folio stuff and just looking at people's pictures, but predominantly now I run a mastermind group every year. I've been doing that for about 5 years. We have a small group. We work together for about 10 months of the year. They have personal projects, and then they work together on a group type of approach as well. They share their challenges with their own projects, and they gain insights and feedback from their fellow mastermind attendees in a safe space. So that's my job, part of it is a one-on-one with me every month as well. So they're working with me individually, but they're also working each month together and bouncing off each other and getting that reflection, not in the space of social media as you can get reflection, but it's kind of can swarm you, it can be negative, positive, it's not always with your best interests in hearts and so on. In this space, it's about people assisting each other in growing. So that's the mastermind group, and I sometimes bring in external speakers to the group. So 5 people in the group getting an external, I've had some pretty prominent speakers come in and just spend a session with my group, and they get a very intimate workshop, and then the one-on-one coaching. So the mastermind group has got people from all over the world. So does the coaching. The current group's got someone from Oklahoma, and we've got 3 Australians in it: Queensland, Victoria, and Perth. So you can probably hear some thunder and lightning and so on. But I've also got one-on-ones with people in India and Europe and New Zealand, and and everyone's different. So I'm more of a creativity coach. I don't spend the time entirely on technique. We might do a little bit on technique, Photoshop, Capture One, things. But as you alluded before, my background, I shot 1,000 weddings. I've done probably 3,000 or 4,000 portraits. I've shot commercial for 20 years. I've done landscape, obviously, for a long time, and fine art, which people probably know me more for, but I've also got a background in coaching, NLP, meditation. So my coaching tends to be a combination of all of those things as a creativity coach, and each person individual. So I don't have come and join me and I'll run my program to you. Everybody's individual. Today I was working with a jeweler who does photography, and she combines that. So it's understanding that I work with artists. Some of them are poets, some are writers. I've got a couple of writers that I work with at the moment that are authors first and photographers second, and I'm helping them with telling their stories and how the pictures tie in. So And any of that, you can either just email me, tony@tonyhewitt.com, or you can just go to the website and you can see what I do there. And if that's of interest or people have an interest in it, they can just contact me there. Send me a message through Instagram, tony.hewitt. There's lots of different ways to contact me like that. I'm not hard to find. If you Google Tony Hewitt nowadays, you can pretty much find it. Or you can pick up the phone and, I haven't got it written down, but if anyone is interested, just write it down, 0411 555508. And of course, it's Australia, so it's +61. But
sure. So I was going to say to the audience, if because not everyone's in a position to get a masterly made 2-meter limited edition print of yours, but the Girt By Sea project in particular, I feel is one of the most accessible and beautiful ways to engage with an incredible body of work that Tony's obviously had a massive part in creating, and it's quite affordable, and it's something that you can spend a lot of time with and come back to at many different times. And it's not the kind of thing I don't personally go through it in one sitting. There's so much to it, and I'm drawn to different things every different time I go back, as you probably already almost felt by some of the images you've seen of Tony. So that's something I personally would highly recommend, that I proudly have sit next to me on the wall here. Is that available through your site too, Tony? Is that the best way to get it?
Yeah, so you can either go to my site, which is tonyhewitt.com, and you'll see the Girt By Sea link and go into the Girt By Sea project. You can go direct to girtbyseaproject.com, and on there, there's the prints, but there's also the book, which the book has an extra 20 pictures in it as well. So that's something that people can also find if they're interested in that. Yeah,
I love the inclusion of the storytelling aspect too. I've said a lot with what the reality of 31 days or whatever it was in a plane would actually be like, and how many bottles got peed into, and how sore your butt was, and the psychology of the dynamics between you all. I've been quite fascinated in my own mind around that, Tony, to be honest.
Yeah, so. There's a video there. I think we've stopped sharing, haven't we, Luke?
Yeah.
Yeah, just so you know, Tony, your camera's sort of been dark for a while, so we're just enjoying your voice, which is fine.
Oh, is that right?
Part of the mystery. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll keep talking for a second just as we finish off. But
Maybe the battery's died or something. It's nice to let your art do the talking, and we can come up with our own visual interpretations of the negative space.
Is there any questions there from anybody?
I think most comments are just about how amazing the images have been, Tony. We've got your had it there, and it's gone away again now.
It'll be back. There you go.
Yeah, I wouldn't stress too much, Tony. We're almost done anyway. But there you go. It's back.
Yeah, battery died. Sorry about that, guys.
That's all good.
Yeah, I thought it might have been that. I popped the message in a while ago, but I'd be too busy doing what you're here to do, which is presenting.
It's all good.
I suppose one thing I'd like to leave people with is that thought that have a look back through your life, through what you did as a kid, what your hobbies were, what you like doing, what you like listening to, the pictures you get attracted to, and look for that common thread through everything, because in amongst that is a clue or clues, which, and they will help you understand your style. But it's kind of, as I said earlier, I don't know if I explained it in a clear way, but for me, if you're looking for your style and you're looking like that, you probably won't see it. It's when you kind of focus on what's important, follow your passion, you'll start to see it almost through your peripheral vision, and you almost see your style through other people's eyes, and you recognize that, okay, if I just do what I do and I don't get in my own way and start trying to get too cerebral or trying to think about it, you don't academically or intellectually create style. It's inherent. It's who you are. It's when you let the more of you that's coming through in your work, the more of your style we're going to see.
Yeah, I've got some of the analogies and the language you use to describe it. I've actually never heard, Tony, and I found that really fascinating. That the kind of symbolism and figurative sort of aspects that can translate very literally in the way in the examples you use to describe, how it works in a real life sort of way. Yeah, I'm probably going to watch this again and maybe write a few of those down. Actually, they were particularly meaningful to me. And yeah, Tony, thanks so much for taking some time out of your very busy life.
Yeah, we very much
be with us.
appreciate it, Tony.
We wanted to have you on the show for a long time, and you know, it's sort of, I almost felt a little bit shy, like a presenter of your caliber to take your time out, you know, to be with us. But it
no, not at all, mate. I'm just as much a rat bag as you guys. I'm not.
Yeah, we're rat bags for sure.
Look, I would, yeah. I'm just like anybody else. I'm just trying to, you know, improve on what I did yesterday. I'm still looking forward to what I might produce in the future. And if
that was the last question I had in mind. Like, where to from here for Tony Hewitt? I guess it's a broad question, I guess, but
no. Look, I've got a couple of bigger projects. Not quite as one's not quite as big as Girt By Sea, but still quite big, and a couple of smaller things that I want to do, and I won't mention them. They're photographic projects, but they also involve books. One of them does. The mastermind group next year, I may run two, because I've had more inquiries already, and I'm thinking, okay, do I run? I don't like running big groups. I like running smaller ones, so that's something I'm going through at the moment. I'm doing a retrospective exhibition that galleries asked me to do my first retro, so it'll be about 10 years, and what we're doing February for a month. I've got one of the new, because they've got 4 gallery spaces in WA. So I'm going to go in there, and it's kind of an artist choice. I'm kind of excited. I get to go back and look at my favourite 15 or 16 from the last 10 years. So it'll be more from the last few, but it's kind of interesting because I've been looking at them and realising how much of them actually do come together quite nicely, you know. So
yeah, talk about an opportunity to recognise the very thing you've been speaking about tonight. You know, the thread of your style and how it's woven through over time.
And I am also just putting together the format for. I don't do the online tutorials and things like that a lot of people do, but I'm thinking what we're looking at is based on demand. I might be able to do a series of short videos, I talk about certain images that people might recognise, and I'll go into the thinking behind it. I think there's so many good quality tutorials and videos out there of how to do things, but I'm looking to. I think a lot of people are still looking for why I should do something, and you know, and get confidence around their own style. So maybe that's where we'll go. So that's something that's in the pipeline.
Yeah, sign me up for that one.
Sounds great. Thank you once again, Tony. It was a real honour to have you on and join us. So and a lot of very positive comments coming through YouTube as well about can't thank you enough. Every time they hear you talk, it's hard not to get excited and encouraged. So there you go.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit thoughtful of where a lot of people are at right now, Tony, which was partly something nice for me that offering, you know, something so thoughtful and this kind of time when people have almost like a forced opportunity to reflect and they have space, and why not be a bit more proactive and conscious like you've offered us tonight. It is the silver lining, and a lot of these sort of enclosed spaces we're finding ourselves is you can go inwards and you can get a lot more clarity about your purpose and refine what you're trying to express, rather than just getting washed up in the hustle of daily life. And you've done that so eloquently for us, Tony, and me too. Thank you.
No worries, you're welcome. And you know, I think ultimately finding style is about you giving yourself permission to be you, and to be more of you and to share more of you. That's what it comes down to. That's what style is. Style is not some preset or some plug-in or, you know, some overlay that you put on all your pictures to get a style. That's not style. You know, that's just a technique, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, that might be part of your style, but it's not style. Style is when you listen to someone speak and there's something about their voice that just makes you want to hear them talk, and you don't care what they talk about. You know, I remember being, just quickly, I was lucky enough to travel with Cancer to Paris, and one of the reps was a French lady, and
you go with Les?
I was with Les, yeah. And she was talking, and she stopped, and I said, "Can you just keep talking?" And she said, "What about?" I said, "I don't care. I just love listening. I just love listening to you speak, you know." And you know, I love with William Turner's pictures. I love what he does. I don't care what the pictures are. I just love them. You know, Jeffrey Smart. So we find, if you go looking at what other people and ask yourself, why do I like this person? Think about actors and actresses that you love. and you think, I don't really care about the movie. I love watching them act. Even if it's in a bad movie, I still like them because there's something about the way they show up and their truth that I warm to. So don't be selfish. Share you with the world because there's only one of you, and why hold on to it? Let others get a bit of it too. And that's, as soon as you start doing that, if you might be lucky enough, someone points a mirror at you and you'll suddenly realise that there's your style. It's been in front of you the whole time.
Yeah.
Magic. Beautiful words.
Yeah, beautifully spoken, Tony.
All right. And
thank you for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks everybody who's listening in and those who may in the future. I hope you enjoy it. Please be safe when, with lockdown, and use it for an opportunity. And I know that's easy to say for someone from WA who can get up in the morning and go to the beach and that, but I can't leave the state. I'm locked in here, but at the same time, it's an opportunity. So what that means to you, I don't know, but stay safe. Be well.
And don't be shy and taking up Tony's invitation to reach out to him.
Reach out, and if I can help you, we'll see what we can do together.
Awesome. And in terms of next week, we have a show about Uluru next week. So very excited about Uluru. I've got my very good friend Jay Evans joining, who's actually a qualified Uluru tour guide, as well as a workshop leader as well. I'll run workshops with Jay at Uluru, so it should be
beating spiritual heart of Australia. That place.
Yeah, it's an incredible place, and so we should get some very detailed insights in terms of also just what the ins and outs are, even from a commercial perspective, photographing at Uluru, which we're hoping to get a lot more detail on as well. So very excited about that episode, to have Jay join us and talk about Uluru, which is, absolutely incredible place. So
we've got a few amazing US photographers that are coming up on our radar that we actually, one tomorrow morning and maybe another next week. We won't say who they are yet, but we're putting together, we're trying to sort of reach out a little bit more internationally at the moment and really enjoying the opportunity. So we'll let that ripple through and see what different influences come through from people from, a different part of our universe on this beautiful planet. Tony, thanks again. Thanks for lining us here for the night, and keep well till I see you next, which hopefully would be sooner rather than later. I'm sorry I missed you and continue. I sound like I just missed you by an hour. I literally just left, I think, when I arrived.
Thank you for taking the time. Thank you, Luke, for looking after us and having us on. So appreciate everyone's time. Take care.
With that,
keep well. Good night, everyone.
We'll leave it there. Catch you later, everyone, and have a great evening.